Greetings from the far side of the galaxy, I'm Furry, your host the most, here with a brand new video. This is a game I've mentioned before on stream. By the by, I stream every Monday and Friday, and it's a Switch game called Mofumofu Sensen, or in English, Fluffy Battlefront. It's a 2D indie fighting game made in Japan, and due to that, I struggled to find any information about it. What I did find is that the game is an indie project made in 2.5 years on the Smile Basic app. More interestingly, this game was made by a single person, Burnsuko. So how does this solo project hold up? As I said before, this is a 2D fighting game where player 1 is on the left and player 2 is on the right, like Guilty Gear but more like Street Fighter. We've got 7 characters, all of which who have 5 moves, 4 specials, and 1 super, barring any command normals. In regards to gameplay, it's similar to something like BlazBlue, where you have light, medium, heavy, and special. Of course, you have your basic attacks and your special attacks, which you can EX by spending some meter. Notably, they function a bit more like overdrives from Street Fighter 6 rather than fighters, where your EX and super moves have totally separate bars. The bar with the 4 notches is EX, and the smaller one above that is your supers. You can cancel your normals into your specials, but only if you spend meter to do it. For the roster, we've got Zig, our Shoto-based protagonist with Atatsu, Hadouken, and DP. My personal favorite move of theirs is their Rush of Punches. And before you ask, it's literally called Stardust Rush, so yes, this is an actual JoJo reference. Then there's Mappo, the other Shoto-tagonist who's charge-based with slight variations to Zig's moves like a projectile traveling across the ground. Both she and Mappo are capable of extending into extra Stardust Rushes after any special by spending meter. Daifuku is Bunny Bikin. Yeah. What makes her special is her, special walking in the air, which lets her use all of her moves as if she was grounded. Notably, they also retain their height properties. Move over, Leo, we've got a new contender for the world's highest low. Then there's my main, Dunker, who's certainly an animal. I have no idea what this is supposed to be, but he does have guns, and that's cool. He's super defensive, with a DP and a special that moves him back as he fires, and a Y move that is great for ground-to-air interaction. He's got 2 projectiles, one that's like Fox's gun from Smash, doing pokes without stun, and Black Fog is like Frieza's Destructo Disc that has a neat interaction. Dunker has to give up advantage when he uses it by either blocking or taking the hit, which encourages your opponent to get up close as counterplay. But what happens if you EXDP your own Black Fog? It explodes again and forces your opponent off of you, but you still take the damage. Then there's Vankov, who's just Zangief if he was a furry. He does throws, has a move that drags him forward, and all that good stuff. I don't really have much to say about him, and the same could be said for the zoner, Siwan. She has the usual zoning moves like an anti-air and a shot that hits close, medium, and far. What's cool is that she can turn invisible and crawl, which is something unique to her. And finally, there's Mandy, who's a weird mix of zoning and charge-based rushdown. Let me explain. She has this one move, Flying Cross, which sends her careening towards her opponent, but she's also able to use Urgent Care to immediately retreat back. Mandy can also heal herself by using Urgent Care. You'll know if it works if she's surrounded by a column of white light. For a game with a smaller roster than Skullgirls, Mofumofu Sensen does wonders for making them feel unique with a moveset limited to only 5. But the game takes it further than their specials by giving characters unique mechanics to make the most of. All of these unique mechanics involve ways to spend their EX meter outside of a special. Zig, for example, is the only character with an air dash, and Vankov is the only one with an air throw. Daifuku has a super jump, Mappo has a double jump, and Dunker has a parry, which I'm very bad at doing, but let's ignore that. It's so weird having these mechanics, which are usually universal, relegated to single characters, but it does wonders for giving characters personality. All of a sudden, you either have a unique way to get advantage, while at the same time your opponent needs to be worried about this one unique trick. It quite literally changes the game, where if you're fighting Zig, you're playing fighters, where you got to worry about the 4-way mix. Then there's Dunker and his parries, where you have to be worried about the sudden shift in tempo. But that's not all Mofumofu Sensen has to set itself apart, because there's also this bar right here. It's used for 2 system mechanics, the Guard Crush and Auto Advancing Guard system. The Guard Crush system is exactly what it sounds like. Guard Crush is the meter to your right. Block too many hits in quick succession and your guard will break, stunning you for a brief moment. The more interesting mechanic is the game's auto-advancing guard system, which is the game's neutral tool. Think of it as an automatic push block where characters are automatically pushed back a certain distance based on context. It's that purple bit of the Guard Crush bar. It'll fill up over time, and when it's full, it'll flash white. And when you block an attack while it's full, you'll automatically force your opponent away based on what move you blocked. For example, a grounded light won't push as far as an aerial heavy, and so on. However, if you take too many hits while your auto-advancing guard gauge is refilling, you can be stunned that way too. Frankly, I don't like this mechanic, not due to anything being wrong with it, I just play Guilty Gear and BlazBlue. I don't like stuns. Each of these systems serve the same purpose as Negative Edge and Wall Breaks from Guilty Gear Strive. Guard Crush is like Negative Edge, encouraging offense so your fighting game doesn't turn into a blocking game. And the auto-advancing guard is like Wall Breaks, resetting the neutral to make sure an opponent on the back foot gets the opportunity to get back in the game. Projectiles also drain minimal meter, discouraging long-range zoning for more upfront interaction. This means the game can be very messy, for lack of a better term, where both you and your opponent are in each other's faces all the time. I also feel that the sprite work is just shy of letting you see such a mess, so it can be hard to win those scrambles. And then there's the sound design, where it's hard to tell what moves are what just by listening. Characters are also very unique in their own way, which complicates things even more, because that's also a thing you have to worry about in the messy melee. The biggest issue a new player will have is the abundance of, well, not necessarily hit stun, but like stop, when the screen just kind of freezes when a hit lands. I suppose that's there to try and make the fights more navigable, but it is something you'll have to get used to, even when you come back as a returning player. I do think this is an issue the dev was aware of because there are a slew of options that are clearly dedicated to increasing the visual ease. Like, by default, there's a flashing pop-up whenever a character spends meter to make the action more readable. A single flashing pop-up wasn't enough, so I did have to dive into the menus to go ahead and change the settings to my liking. I actually think that's one of the coolest things about Mofumofu Sensen, the level of care that went into the settings. There's accessibility options, and then there's accessibility options. Mofumofu Sensen genuinely has some of the best settings I've ever seen in regards to making things easier for the player. You can change the look of every meter from health to EX to be less distracting. You can even choose to fade out the background if you really want to. It has full button rebinding, which is so rare for a Switch game. Even the little pop-up that happens whenever you spin the EX meter can be changed. You can even adjust the hue in-game, and it comes with preset themes. And then there's the settings and customization you get before fights. There's the usual stuff you can adjust, like the number of wins needed, and then there's the weird stuff you can adjust, like whether or not you want the auto-advancing guard or guard crush system on. Then there's the really weird stuff, like being able to decide how much meter you want to start with. And I can't think of any other fighting game that does that, not for training mode, but for the actual fights. You usually only see this level of customization in training mode, and then there's the settings in training mode. There's the usual stuff like being able to set actions to the NPC and recording specific actions. But it also lets you turn on the full range of hitboxes should you wish. There's also the option to slow down training mode if you want to follow the interaction play by play to varying degrees. You can do very light all the way to very hard. Don't do very hard, kids. There are only two things missing from training mode, and it's quite weird to have them missing at all. The first is the ability to reset and send everything back to neutral, and the second is a virtual controller to see what buttons and what your analog stick is doing. And the weirdest thing is that I know it exists, it's there in the demo, but I have not for the life of me found any way to turn it on. Barring the two weird absences in training mode, the settings do have a lot of depth. You're certain to find the perfect settings to play with your friend, so long as they're in the same house as you, because this game doesn't have online. That's right, a fighting game released in the year of our Lord 2022 does not have any online functionality. Not peer-to-peer 1v1s, not even the leaderboards, there just isn't any. It's not just a huge missed opportunity, it's actively harming the game. I can't think of a single popular fighting game from the last decade that didn't have online. The closest you get to fighting other players is regular couch co-op, which I like as much as the next guy, but come on, man. This isn't even a Discord fighter. It's somehow below even that. And the lack of online functionality isn't the only issue with the game either. You probably noticed when I said very light and very hard, but the translation for the game is iffy. I'm not even sure if Daifoku is this character's name because sometimes it says Daihoku. I get that this is an indie game made by one dude, but could I at least get a little consistency? It also doesn't help that while the game does do well enough at explaining commands and all that, there's no combo trial. The closest thing to that is the demos where you get to watch recordings of the characters doing their moves. It's a neat way to see how a character works, but it isn't a replacement for the hands-on purpose of combo trials. The fact that you can't even fight other players to see what they do with your character and imitate that because, once again, there isn't any online. To make bad matters even worse, your options for fighting NPCs aren't that varied. You have training mode, which is a pretty nice place to lab, although your progress will be slow because there's like no online guides for stuff, no real community. You're going to have to discover all your tech all by yourself, which is a hurdle. Then you have free battle, which is, well, free battle. There's not much I can say there. The best option you've got for NPC fights is the main story mode, which is pretty much your stock standard arcade mode. You fight against every other character in the standard best of 2 set you see everywhere. Fighting against just the AI does suck, but it won't be easy. The game does have dedicated systems to making sure the AI will give you a challenge. It's called the Front Directionary CPU algorithm, or at least that's what the website calls it, and to explain in terms that are way too simplified, the AI will actually counter you if you start spamming the same move, like teching throws more and more. They'll also stop doing things the AI deems unsuccessful, so the AI only goes for winning strategies. I'm not sure, but I think the AI even remembers as you go from one fight to the next, so things get pretty hard towards the end once it remembers all your bullshit. Dunker is actually locked on the character select for the main story. You have to beat the entire story mode without losing a round to get to his fight. I recommend setting the number of victories needed to 1 just to make things easier for yourself. The difficulty does keep me engaged enough when doing arcade mode, but I can only go through arcade mode so many times before I need to put it down. And since we're talking about the main story, I might as well mention how I understand none of it. There does appear to be some sort of plot, but I can't for the life of me figure it out. The game does have omakes, which are little cutscenes at the end of story mode, which certainly seem to be about something. And you can unlock quite a few of them, which is actually a nice reason to do story mode. You even get hints as to how to unlock them, which can help in your progress. But the omakes I have right now just aren't enough for me to understand a damn thing that's going on. Which does suck because I do actually want to know. Just look at the background of the Institute stage. What in the world is this shit? Is Medi doing human or, well, beastman experiments? I'd sure like to know. Though, despite having just complained about it, I don't hate this game. It has a lot of cool systems, and the characters and the art style and the world are just so cool. It's just lacking one of the biggest things a fighting game needs, which is another person to fight against. Unless you're willing to grab a friend, you're stuck on your own. Though, to be frank, the biggest thing Mofumofu Sensen has going for it is none of the game's systems. It's the fact that it's $6 US on the Nintendo eShop. On one hand, no online. On the other hand, it's $6. On one hand, the game's very confusing. On the other hand, it's $6 Mofumofu Sensen is cheaper than every Guilty Gear title. It is cheaper than an entire additional character for Guilty Gear Strive. Honestly, I just feel like an asshole whenever I complain about anything in this game because it is $6. I've tipped DoorDash drivers more than that. This entire game will cost you less than an additional costume for Street Fighter 6. Like, if you have nothing better to spend literal pocket change on, then why not buy Mofumofu Sensen? This may be a weird note to end the video on, but it's what I'm doing. As always, it's time we do our Patreon shoutouts. For our 3 stars, we have special thanks to 87 Werehog, Deco, Zorachao, Choron, Ganlafay, Dranking Yara, Anon RC, Lightning Shadow, and Kayun. For 4 stars, we have Miki Moon and Miko, the birds of a feather. And for our super duper special 5-star shoutouts, we have first Vanilla Flower, a power beyond control. Second, Poor Mage, the Bully Breaker. Then, the Good Old Days, the Demon of the Spring. Followed by Hodari Lion, the Ultimate Omelet. Next, Sky King 64, the Winged Sun. And finally, Mahagasaur, the Universe in Peril. As always, thanks for watching. Do be sure to like and subscribe and check out my Ko-fi and Patreon. As always, I'm your host Furry, signing out.